Hello friends, I am Nisha Sharma, Associate Professor, Department of English, Government College, Khetri. The topic under discussion today is in continuation with our last topic. In our last video, we critically evaluated William Blake's poem, London. This lecture would focus on a line by line, or we can say a stanza wise analysis of London. William Blake belongs to the Romantic age. As you know, literature is the mirror to society as well as a medium for bringing the desired change in the society. William Blake in his London presents a true picture of his age. London was published in Songs of Experience in 1794. Blake lived in London, so he writes of it as a resident rather than a visitor. England in 1800 became very oppressive, influenced by the French Revolution. Blake also presents before us the adverse effects of the industrialization, which gave birth to urbanization, lack of health and hygiene, ill practice of chimney sweepers, extramarital affairs, etc. The poem London reveals William Blake's feelings toward the society that he lived in. To endure 1800s England was to know the most restrictive of society, where laws were broken only on penalty of death and people followed a specific societal protocol. London really reveals William Blake's true thoughts about the society in which he lived. Of all the poems of social criticism, London is the most vivid and the most powerful. It is vivid because we experience with the poet the scenes of misery as he walks through the city. The poet's fierce indignation comes over in the vocabulary like weakness, woe, cry, fear, bend, appalls, helpless, blights, hurts, etc. Repetition is used with hammer-like effect to strike home the message. But the poem's power also rests on its strong intellectual content and on the strikingly original way in which some of its images are used. It is still universal and timeless, as every society has restrictions which it has placed on human lives. The speaker makes it very clear that he believes the government to have too much control and society to be stringent. Now we'll discuss the stanza first of the poem. The poet begins the poem by saying, I wandered through each chartered street, near where the chartered Thames does flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. The first thing that comes to our notice in these lines is the practice of repetition. Chartered word has been used twice and mark word has been used twice. And weakness and woe, flow, these are the uses of alliteration. The first stanza, in the first stanza, the speaker provides setting and tone. The setting can of course be derived from the title, but the first stanza also reveals that the speaker is walking down a street. He says that he wanders down each chartered street. The term wander gives some insight into the speaker as well. He appears to be not quite sure of himself and a bit misguided, if not entirely lost. Means he is making an aimless walk. The use of the term chartered also suggests that the streets he walks are controlled and rigid. He is not walking in a free open field, but a confined, rigid, mapped out area. The speaker will expound upon this idea later on in London. As he walks, He notices something about the faces of the people walking by. There seems to be the marks of weariness in them all. He describes their faces as having weakness and woe. This sets up the tone as melancholy. The gloom and the sadness seem to seep from the speaker's voice as he describes the passer-by. The verb wander makes the walk seem almost casual or aimless. This helps make the misery that followed seem like an everyday kind of misery. This world of poverty and pain is just what people will find in London whenever they walk through it. To wander also suggests a kind of freedom, an idea which is put under strain by the word charter. A charter is a legal document granting or denying powers or access. For example, England's constitution, which was called Magna Carta, which provided the people some rights. A charter is a legal document granting or denying power or access to a particular plot of land. For example, in this one word, the speaker suggests what he or she hates about modern society, the way it restricts and devalues human life. The chartered street specifically hint at the way London is a chartered London is a kind of case, keeping its inhabitants within the confines of their pain. The word chartered repeated in line 2 reflects the way that this case is inescapable. The streets then represent physical city limits that in turn hint at the mental limitations of the mind-forged manacles introduced in line number 8. Line 2 carries on with chartered by now applying it to the Thames. The Thames is the river that flows through London and it is a key part of the social fabric of the city. It's still pretty dirty now, but back when Blake was writing, it would have been even worse, full of filth, waste, and even dead bodies. Here, the Thames acts as a kind of symbol in rivers. Rivers are often symbols of natural beauty, freedom, but in the poem, the Thames only adds to the sense of misery, limitation, and restriction. Worth noting here is that in the poem's first draft, both instances of chartered read dirty instead. Chartered must have seemed to better reflect the specific points about London's oppression that Blake wanted the poem to make. The word wander makes the walk seem almost useless, aimless. This helped make the misery that followed seem like an everyday kind of misery. Now we come to the stanza number 2. In every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every band, the mind-forged manacles I hear. The same practice of repetition has been followed in this stanza also. The word every has been repeated 4 to 5 times in the stanza, and the use of alliteration M sound has been repeated. While the first stanza sets up the tone of London, the second stanza gives some insight into the speaker's melancholy feelings toward the people he watches pass him by. The speaker reveals that from the cry of the newborn infant to the cry of the full-grown man, he hears the mind-forged manacles. This gives insight into the despairing view of mankind. The manacles are shackles or some kind of chain that keeps a person imprisoned. The fact that these chains are mind-forged reveals that they are metaphorical chains created by the people's own ideas. The use of the word bend reveals that these manacles are placed there by society. A ban, of course, is a restriction given by law. The speaker's use of words such as chartered, ban, and manacles reveal his belief that society metaphorically imprisons people. Suddenly, it becomes apparent that the thoughts, pressures, and ideals of society are under scrutiny here. The word chartered is bitterly ironic, for freedom implies strength and power, but Blake's learners display weakness and fear. Blake uses an industrial image, mind force manacles, to convey the oppression and enslavement in the world of experience. In the third stanza, the poet criticizes the famous institutions of the society, that is, church, palace. How the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. In this stanza, the speaker digs even deeper into the reasons for his feelings toward humanity. He implies that the shackles or the chains worn by the people and inflicted by society have some disastrous results. He begins with the chimney sweeper. The chimney sweeper was one of the poorest of society. His life expectancy was threatened because of his line of work. He was consistently dirty and sick. Those of the lowest class were forced into this kind of work in order to provide for their families. Then the speaker criticized the church, calling it blackening and claiming that even the church appalls at the chimney sweeper. Often, the chimney sweepers were just children. They were small enough to fit down the chimneys. These children were often orphan children, and the church was responsible for them. This explains why the poet ties the chimney sweepers with the blackening church. The cry of the chimney sweepers is a reproach to the church, which is perhaps blackened by the smoke of industry, as well as the spreading spiritual bleakness by the repressive and pitiless nature of its teachings and by its failure to speak out against social injustice. Thus, the poet presents before us the problems created by industrialization, that is, the practice of chimney sweepers, and at the same time, the pollution. The speaker then turns his attentions to the hapless soldier. He has already criticized society, pointed out the misfortunes of the poor and the hypocrisy of the church, and now he will also criticize the government by suggesting that the soldiers are poor victims of a corrupt government. He reveals his feelings towards war by describing the blood that runs down the palace wall. The palace, of course, is where royalty would have lived. Thus, the speaker accuses the higher up people in its society of spilling the blood of the soldiers in order to keep their comfort of living in a place. Blood guilt falls upon king and government through the soldiers' loss or destruction of life, while on a more literal level, the blood on the palace wall is that shed in an uprising of soldiers against the lot forced upon them. The poet criticizes the monarchy that it is not taking any step to improve the lifestyle or to the living of these soldiers. And if it doesn't take proper measures, then the institution of monarchy is at risk. And in the last stanza, the poet presents the most critical problems of his time, but that is the problem of illegitimate children and at the same time the institution of marriage, which is at higher risk. Most through midnight streets I hear how the youthful harlot's curse blasts the newborn infant's tear and blights with plagues the Mary's hearts. In the final stanza, the speaker reveals how the corruptness of society attacks innocence. He says that he hears the youthful harlot's curse. The idea of a youthful harlot suggests the level of poverty and corruption that a girl who was yet a youth would be involved in prostitution. Then things become even more interesting as the speaker reveals the object of the harlot's cursing. She curses at the tears of a newborn baby. This is the ultimate attack upon innocence. The speaker does not reveal whether the harlot is the mother of the baby or not, but he does imply that rather than comforting a crying infant, she curses it. This reveals the hardened heart of the harlot, which represents the hardened heart of society at large. While the innocent shed tears, the perverted attack them. The last line of London reveals the speaker's thoughts on marriage as well. The harlot apparently has blighted the marriage house. She has deranged marriage by having sold her body even before entering into the marriage union. Although the speaker believes that the harlot has somehow damaged marriage, he also reveals his belief about marriage in the first place. The fact that he calls it a marriage hearse. Hearse is a carriage that carries the dead bodies, reveals that he views marriage as death. Overall, the poem has criticized society, the church, prostitution, and even marriage. The innocent baby shedding tears represents those who are innocent in the world. They are few and they are scoffed at. They are also infants and are not left to be innocent for long. Their innocence is blasted by the cry of the perverted. The poet says that even this problem of illegitimate relationship, extramarital relationship, and the problem of illegitimate children is due to industrialization. Due to industrialization, people are forced to leave their villages and their wives, etc., in their villages, and they move towards a city. And in city, in order to satisfy their physical needs, they make contact with other prostitutes, and therefore they become infected with the STDs, that is sexually transmitted diseases. And when they contact their wives and other family members, these diseases are then transferred to them. Thus, the hypocrisy and repression of society is summed up most strongly for Blake by the prostitute, probably little more than a girl. Though she is generally the butt of the most ferocious moral condemnation, to Blake, she is the victim of the repressive marriage laws, which by social and legal means united husbands and wives and held them together against their will and drove men to find furtive pleasures in the city brothels. The harlot's curse is a cry of resentment which metaphorically blights or casts shame on wedded love and its offspring. On a more literal level, the harlot's curse is the venereal disease which a man spreads to his wife and child, often quite literally bringing death to the family. This disease is in turn symbolic of the unhealthy state of marriage, the very reverse of the free and spontaneous love which Blake saw as man's true law. Thus, the poem London reveals William Blake's true thoughts about the society in which he lived. Of all the poems of social criticism, London is the most vivid and most powerful. The poem's power also rests on its strong intellectual content and on the strikingly original way in which some of its images are used. Thank you.